on the Botswana Connect. So one very last discussion, a very pertinent one as well. Gender-based violence remains a significant challenge in Botswana. There is a worrying rise in reported cases during the just ended festive season. We're seeing women and children disproportionately affected by the various forms of violation, as well as such as domestic abuse, such as sexual harassment, as opposed to their male counterparts. Now, this afternoon, the Minister of Youth and Gender Affairs, Mr. Lesego Chombo, joins us here in studio to discuss the ministry's strategy, or perhaps what efforts, collaborative or singular, the ministry is engaged with in response to this. Let me just take this time to thank you for your time for coming through on the Minister. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Right. So, what a time. We saw your statement this morning as in your position in response to this very palpable state of of concern as concerns gender-based violence. I want to start there. Give this audience, the audience of BTV News, the opportunity to share what a message you took out today.
Right. We stand against all forms of violence, gender and otherwise. It's very sensitive, like you said. But one thing that we can note about it, it is very intrusive into our personal spaces. Like you mentioned just when you opened earlier on, it affects mostly women and children disproportionately. And it goes on to also be reflected in intimate partner relationships, which is why we speak of how personal and intimate it is. Now, our call to action as a starting point as the Ministry of Youth and Gender Affairs is that realization. It's that appreciation that it is between you and me only. The way we relate with each other, the perceptions that we have around mental health, the perceptions that we have around patriarchy, around culture, around relationships. It starts with me as an aunt to my nephews, how I'm raising them, and to you as a parent, how we raise our children to say, do we say that men are more superior than women, boys are more superior than girls? Do we allow boys to be boys and cry and be vulnerable, or do we cage them in an environment that leaves them basina kubakala lanting, bahella elokore, bahella ba khokhontsha bomme. Ile khanya gore ha gona go ba ka ipuelang teng kana ga ba rutiwa ka ha ba ka sekasekang le go so regarding gender-based violence is that it is indeed a national emergency, but a national emergency is at different levels. Indeed, there's the ministerial level, there's policy level, there's presidential level, there's global level. However, because we are taking a route of preventative measures, a preventative approach, when we say, civil society organizations are there, shelters definitely needing more are there. We have a response system to gender-based violence. And what we desperately need is a preventative approach to say in the way that we behave with each other in our personal spaces and professional spaces, we all take this as a priority to ensure that we inculcate a culture that is conducive for mental health, a culture that is conducive for gender equality, so that we can curb this issue.
So let me see if I'm getting this. What I think I'm understanding is your call is for all of us to play our part.
Please.
Okay. All right. What has been said in the recent past, I think every time there's a state of uneasiness, a state of dis-ease, then we look for a nearest escape or figure to attribute it to. It has been said that you have not come through, you're a bit quiet, and I saw from also the responses from your call out this morning. We seem to be thinking, no, but you should. You've been quiet. Let's speak to that. Where there has been commentary that is saying, Minister of Gender, why have you not heard you say anything after they said, 19 murder cases, 60, I can't remember the exact figures that came out just last week, I think, yeah.
Speaking of those figures, similarly as the ministry, we are actually awaiting the publishing of the official figures, which is set to be published on Monday. It's not even to not realize that even if they are standing at 92 as they are, that it's not enough for us to act. It is. It is. We are striving for zero violence. So any amount possible requires us to take that action. The ministry it's an ever-working machine. It is an ever-working machine that has so many aspects to it, including the civil society organizations, including churches, including Bohosi. So this issue is something that we do take as a priority.
You know what I want to perhaps paint out to that one? The Ministry of Youth and Gender, specifically the gender function.
Yes.
What is the structure of that government function?
The gender department under the ministry plays, you can call it an oversight role. It is the anchor of all gender issues. It facilitates various institutions, governmental, private, NGOs, legal frameworks. It is a vast machine that anchors and that ensures collaboration between different institutions. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're prioritizing is the Interministerial Committee on Gender-Based Violence. Really Ministry of Youth and Gender Affairs, mo department in agenda. Really knows. I do not shy away from saying that.
We started with gender mainstreaming.
Yes,
before we get to
mainstreaming is everything. Mainstreaming is everything. When we speak of gender-based violence, automatically we speak of gender equality. And this is something that needs to be implemented in every level. But now when we even speak of violence, there are different aspects to it. Some of the partnerships that we will most certainly be exploring and implementing more vigorously, for example, is that with the Ministry of Health. To say the root cause of gender-based violence, currently one of them at the highest level, is mental health. So we need a stable environment of mental health. Even it prioritizes men's mental health, because it is indeed a priority and a leading cause of gender-based violence. We have issues of, like I mentioned, inculcating a culture. This is where we now partner with the Ministry of Child Welfare and Basic Education to say we know that our traditional practices, our patriarchal culture contribute significantly to this issue, just the lack of equality. And that's something that you cannot change overnight, unfortunately. And so we have various partnerships, including that with the justice system, and all of these communities and ministries and NGOs, all of us are collaborating to ensure that we work towards ending gender-based violence. But I repeat, we also need to see how personal it is.
All right. So then, as the anchor of all efforts or all action, gender being the ministry and the gender affairs department, then how accessible? What is your what does your reach look like? Yes, the ministry is right here,
Yes.
but we don't get violated. We don't get issues of equality, equity, parity, and all our efforts. What is your spread like?
Let me start by acknowledging that I do wish we had a much bigger department. The Department of Gender currently stands at 124 across the country, which is not enough. We have 72 program staff, and then we have 52 support staff that will be on corporate services, which means that as the department alone, we're not enough to tackle it. 152 is far from enough. Which is why we then play an oversight role. I do assure Botswana, however, that this is one of the priorities. As the anchor and the beginning of all things gender affairs and all things gender equality, we need to be equipped enough and resourced enough to facilitate it. On the ground, we have so many organizations that are doing the work on the ground. We partner with different organizations and tradition and so on and so forth. are truly passionate and implementing gender equality in their own spaces. Dikgosi di tshwana le Kgosi Tshwane, Kgosi Somalekai at G West, they're actively working towards assisting us, and we constantly and consistently partner with them. We have different NGOs as well on the ground, and hakiri we have them.
They're doing that effort.
That effort is financed by the Department of Gender and facilitated by the Department of Gender. We also have the Gender Commission, which plays an advisory role to say, on the ground, the social workers under local government, the NGOs, this is how you as government can assist in facilitating them, because we understand how intimate it is. Ministry of Youth,
Right.
BTV, and so we do have partnerships at all levels with different stakeholders implement our goal towards gender equality.
And this is this government is anchored on the respect and upholding of human rights. And I want to come just there, you know, the legal framework, how the legal framework is making the national response possible.
Yes.
How is it that the legal framework, what do we have in place that is trying to drive towards this total elimination? Because it's one thing for these different efforts to be in place, but where a right is violated, it is protected by law.
It's very important. So there are two aspects to tackling gender-based violence, as we've been saying. Preventative, the responsive one, and that's where the legal frameworks come. We have various acts. The penal code is one which I believe that most enforcers find to be the best to use, than stricter penalties. Bill Act the Elon Koreari, highly Koreano Kokontitui, Onale Tono Yahoka, Bua, Korea, Bakayukana Muton Kokontita, consider you for bail. Korkana Bela Samotua Langam Pole Bakai. That's what the Bill Act says. We also have the Sexual Offenders Registry Act, which thought that the goal ha re tswa mo Decembernyana go nne go nnile le bana ba ba reipilweng le ba ba bolailweng re batla go ba itse e re ba tsena into society e be re itse gore ke bomang, because this act doesn't allow them to be working with persons living with disability, with children, and so on and so forth, with vulnerable communities to ensure that they're protected. We also have the Cybercrime and Computer Related Crimes Act. The Anti-Human Trafficking Amendment Act, and so on and so forth. But with all of these, we have found gaps. We have found gaps in implementation. We have found gaps where our implementers feel like is a penal code instead of this, because your net's much more stricter, and so on and so forth. But one thing I can attest to is that our justice system, knowing the law, are doing it from a good space to say, a very important thing to note, having reflected on the various gaps that these laws have, the goal is to enact the Gender-Based Violence Act. Is filling in the gaps between all of these acts that are currently not being fully implemented.
I'm going to interrupt you a bit, because in the Parliament you're facing a motion that the Parliament took a position on, which was speaking to a section in the Criminal Procedures and Evidence Act.
Indeed.
While we're still on the legal framework. So how this, what is in the Criminal Procedures and Evidence Act? That position of Parliament was that it actually makes it swifter for those that have fallen victim to get justice.
Yes. Yeah. So this particular section that was discussed in the motion in Parliament, in summary, a threat or indeed violence or assault, again, whether it's physical or not, whether it was in private or not, I shall go to the magistrate court, at which point the magistrate shall hear my case and offer me that protection.
Okay.
Protection, the magistrate will then cause whoever the perpetrator is to be arrested and brought to justice. And
okay, so basically that is what it pronounces.
Yes, so
in sort of the rigmarole, the usual process, this can be expedited like that.
Indeed. Okay. The current state of affairs is that you can go to the magistrate court. Okay. Leading currently, ha ke le Lesego Chombo la ke se Lesego Chombo o le one o ka ya go ga makastrata gompieno wa re ba gaetso motho o mpiditse kana ke a go gontshiwa kana ke na le a threat,
because when the threat is active,
yes,
sometimes the process we end up losing lives during the process.
Indeed. But we as the Department of Gender Affairs have indeed verified, because we are committed to this cause, we are committed to ending violence. And so we have taken it upon ourselves to verify with the Ministry of Justice, like that in charge of the magistrates and so on and so forth. But we've also taken a chance to verify it personally. There is a structure. The motion that was in Parliament was to specifically set peace desks. And it was rejected on the basis that it seems it's not necessarily called a peace desk, but indeed when you do go to the magistrate court and you are on oath when we speak of expediting our processes and creating a better conducive environment for survivors and victims, one thing that we would like to push for is a one-stop shop.
Yeah, we've had courts. We've had police stations, the service center being adjusted to deal with the sensitivity of gender-based violence. You are calling on us to play our part today. I am sounding very much like I'm running up because I am. The time is unfortunately not on our side. But having said all this, that at policy level, there's instruments in place. At the national level, there is, and there perhaps are areas of
growth for sure.
Areas of growth, but the areas of policy framework that we are failing to access because maybe we're not aware of. Yes, that was a sentiment that you shared at some point. Let's wrap it then today. In this state that is seemingly the state of emergency. I have called it that. There was a lady that went
It is indeed a state of emergency.
A state of emergency, calling for a state of emergency. What are we saying to the nation as your part in short in this platform?
I am going to start by being thankful. I know how everything that is currently going on with the noise seems very negative. But if there's anything I appreciate about it is that Botswana are aware and alive to the realities of our country. I will definitely applaud them for that. Botswana are passionate about change. And Botswana are hopeful. You know, when you get someone say, what are you doing? They have hope for a better tomorrow. And that is something that I would like to express my gratitude for. And I would also like to give assurance. We share the same heartbreak. We have sisters, we have nieces, we have mothers, we have brothers who are also facing violence. And so this is on a much more personal note to say it is an issue that we're all passionate about, that we're all working towards. And the sooner we realize that a state of emergency, the sooner we realize that this national emergency operates at different levels and that you have a voice that is so valid. The same voice that you're able to be pushing a narrative right now about whether or not government is doing enough is the same voice that could have so much impact towards perpetrators. The same voice that can give hope to victims, to survivors. The same voice that you can use with your networks, with your capacity, with your funds to take action against gender-based violence.
And thank you, Honorable Minister, for coming through. A very infectious state of emotion, actually. What we are facing as a nation as regards gender-based violence, as a nation that prides